while recovering from surgery, I overheard something that shook me to my core. It happened on the third day of my hospital stay. I had just come out of groggy, half-awake state due to the painkillers they'd given me. The kind of state where you're not fully asleep, but not quite awake either. I was drifting in and out when I heard my wife Cindy and our 17-year-old daughter Megan outside my room. They were talking quietly in the hallway. Thinking I was still out of it, I heard Cindy's voice, excited and almost giddy, as she spoke in a tone I hadn't heard from her in years. Once he dies, we'll finally get the life insurance money, and we can move somewhere better. It felt like I'd been struck in the chest. Once he dies, not if. It was as if she was already planning my death. And then Megan, my own daughter, added, I'm so tired pretending to care about him. I can't even describe the feeling. It was like someone had ripped my heart out. The pain wasn't just emotional, it physically hurt. I had barely processed what I'd heard when they pushed the door open and walked in, acting as though nothing had happened. Cindy came over and kissed my forehead, and Megan placed a vase of flowers on the table beside me. How are you feeling, Dad? Megan asked. I managed to thank them for the flowers, though my voice felt hollow. I said I was tired and asked if they could leave for a bit. They seemed almost relieved to leave, and after they were gone, I just stared at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even think straight. I was numb, utterly numb. I wondered if I had hallucinated it. The meds were strong, after all. Maybe it was a bad dream. But then, I started thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. Cindy had been asking more and more questions about my life insurance policy, the one I'd upgraded when Megan was born. She'd mentioned how her friends had moved into nicer neighborhoods, and Megan had become distant, always too busy to join in our traditional Sunday football games. These little things didn't seem so important at the time, but in hindsight, they made perfect sense. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I started formulating a plan. I knew I couldn't let this slide. The next morning, I texted my brother Owen, who I've always been close to. I told him to come to the hospital the next day, but I didn't give him any details. Just asked him to come alone. Owen arrived around 9 a.m. The nurses had just finished their rounds, so we had some privacy. I told him everything, and at first, he thought I was joking. I couldn't blame him. It sounded unbelievable. But it wasn't a joke. It was the truth. And now, the real questions were just beginning. It felt like something straight out of one of those trashy daytime TV shows. But when he saw my face, he knew. Owen had suggested I hire a private investigator. But I wasn't ready to take that step yet. Instead, I asked him to do some digging on our home computer when Cindy and Megan weren't around. He had a key to the house for emergencies. 2 days later, Owen returned with screenshots. Cindy had been searching up details like how long after death a life insurance policy paid out and the average hospital stay for gallbladder complications. She had also been looking at houses in neighborhoods we could never afford on my salary alone, and there were emails to a realtor about viewing properties once things settled down. I felt like I was living in an alternate reality. This woman, who had slept beside me for over 2 decades and whom I thought I had built a life with, had been plotting something entirely different. I remembered how she had cried happy tears when I surprised her with a weekend getaway for our 10th anniversary, a simple little cabin by the lake. It was all I could afford at the time. I remembered how she had held my hand through my mother's funeral 5 years ago. Had all of that been a lie? Was she waiting for me to die this whole time? And Megan? That was even worse. I had taught her to ride a bike, stayed up all night helping her with science fair projects, worked double shifts just to buy her the laptop she needed for school. I thought we had a solid relationship, maybe not perfect, but solid. Apparently I was wrong. The next few days in the hospital were surreal. Cindy and Megan visited every day, and I began watching them with new eyes. I noticed how Cindy checked the monitors when she thought I wasn't looking, how she asked the nurses about my recovery with a voice that now sounded so fake. Megan, on the other hand, was always on her phone, barely engaging, clearly just there because she had to be. I started playing up my symptoms, wincing more when I moved, talking about how tired I was and how the doctors were concerned about my recovery. I saw something flicker in Cindy's eyes when I mentioned that the doctor wanted to run more tests. Was it hope? The thought made me sick. On day 5, Owen brought me my tablet so I could watch some shows. What I actually did was log into our shared accounts and check our joint bank history. Cindy had recently been shopping more. Nothing outrageously expensive, but small luxury items like new shoes, fancy skincare products, and meals at nice restaurants with her friends. Meanwhile, she had been complaining about how money was tight and had asked me to cut back on unnecessary expenses, like my monthly poker nights with friends, which only cost around $30. I also found out that she had called our insurance company 3 times in the past month to verify details. According to the phone account logs, she was double-checking everything. By the time I was discharged a week later, I had a pretty clear picture. My wife of 20 years had been waiting for me to die, and possibly had been waiting for years. Worse, she had poisoned Megan against me too. The doctor gave me strict instructions on my recovery. 6 weeks of taking it easy, no heavy lifting, regular checkups. I nodded and thanked him while internally making very different plans. Cindy drove me home, fussing over me in a way that now felt suffocating. She had set up a temporary bed in the living room, so I wouldn't have to manage the stairs. So thoughtful, right? Or maybe she just wanted to monitor my condition more easily. That night, while they thought I was sleeping, I texted Owen again. I told him I needed his help with something important. Something that would make sure Cindy and Megan would regret the day they decided my life was worth more as an insurance payout than as a husband and father. I may have been down, but I was far from out. In 2 weeks, they were going to realize just how big a mistake they had made. It's been a week since I got home from the hospital, and the responses to my last post have been overwhelming. My inbox exploded with messages. Thanks for all the support and advice. Some of you guessed what I was planning, and you weren't far off. The morning after I got home, I called my buddy Arthur while Cindy was out grocery shopping. Arthur and I go way back. Played football together in high school. He was my best man at my wedding, and now he's a lawyer, which is coming in handy right about now. I told him everything. The conversation I overheard, the evidence Owen found, all of it. Arthur was quiet for a long time. Then he just said, "Damn, that's cold." He advised me not to confront them yet, and said I needed more evidence and to get my financial ducks in a row first. Smart man. He came over the next day while Cindy was at her weekly book club. Spoiler alert, based on her Goodreads activity, she hasn't actually read a book in months. We sat in my temporary living room bed setup, and he walked me through all my options. Divorce is obviously on the table, but there's more to it than that. I want to make sure that when I pull the trigger, there's no room for them to worm their way back in or take me for more than they deserve. Exactly 0. The first thing Arthur suggested was changing my life insurance policy. Currently, Cindy is the primary beneficiary, with Megan as the secondary. We set it up that way years ago. When Megan was younger, the policy worth $350,000 wasn't a fortune, but was enough to apparently spark thoughts of murder. At least that's how things seemed as I stood in the midst of a terrible realization. Arthur helped me get in touch with my insurance agent to make the changes, and that was the beginning of my plan. I made the decision to remove Cindy from the policy completely and made sure the beneficiary split was changed. 60% of the money was designated for Cancer Research Foundation in honor of my father, who died from cancer 10 years ago. The remaining 40% was designated for Megan, but with a significant stipulation. It would go into a trust that she couldn't access until she turned 30. And here's the real twist. Owen, my brother, would be the trustee of the fund, not Cindy. That way, even if I did pass away unexpectedly, Cindy wouldn't see a dime. No, not even a cent. Next on the list were our joint bank accounts. There was about $37,000 in savings at the time. Not a huge amount, but we've been diligently putting away a little each month for years. Arthur, ever the careful planner, advised me to move half of it into a new account under just my name. Legally, I was entitled to 50% of our savings without raising any suspicion in case of divorce, so I followed his advice. I transferred $18,500 to a separate account at a different bank. I'll never forget the look on the bank teller's face when I asked for a new account. She must have thought I was on my deathbed, trying to hide my money. I probably looked like I was dying for real, considering the way I must have seemed, pale, exhausted, and recovering from surgery. She likely thought I was trying to cover my tracks from the government or some other official body. I couldn't help but laugh about it later. But as I handled the financial side of things, Owen was busy gathering more evidence for me. He'd been coming over to help me around the house as I recovered, and Cindy actually seemed grateful for this at first. It meant less work for her, but Owen was paying close attention. He noticed how little Cindy checked in on me when she thought no one was watching, how she would sigh heavily whenever she had to bring me something. Little things like that, details that all added up over time. But it didn't stop there. Cindy had been making phone calls from the back porch, speaking quietly. Owen, who was taking out the trash one day, accidentally overheard one of these conversations. Cindy was talking to her friend Lisa about houses in Oak Ridge, a very fancy neighborhood across town that we'd driven through once. I had always commented that we could never afford to live there, but from the sound of it, Cindy was now looking at financing options that would soon be available to her, as though she was planning on making a move. Owen said it made him sick to his stomach hearing that conversation. Cindy's plans were becoming more and more apparent, and it only added to the evidence that things weren't right. I had already started keeping a video diary on my phone, just small clips here and there, where I would talk about what was happening in my life, how I was feeling, and what I had discovered. I made sure to date and timestamp everything. Arthur had advised that it might come in handy if things ever got messy in court. Honestly, it helped me just to talk it out, even if it was just in my phone's camera at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I wasn't sure how far things would go, but I had to be ready for whatever was coming. The craziest part of all of this was pretending. I had been playing up my weakness, moving more slowly than I needed to, wincing even when it wasn't necessary. The doctor said recovery would take about 6 weeks, but I was already feeling better. Not 100%, but definitely not the invalid I was pretending to be. It was a psychological game, and I was playing it to perfection, and it was working. Cindy had gotten so comfortable with the idea that I was essentially helpless that she began taking more me time. She started going out with friends, going on shopping trips, and even took a weekend girls' getaway that I'm pretty sure I was financing. Meanwhile, I was supposedly too weak to do much beyond shuffle between the bathroom and the bedroom. Then, 3 days ago, I hit the mother lode. Cindy had left her laptop open when she went to take a shower. I almost didn't look. It felt like crossing a line, something I wasn't sure I was ready to do. But then I remembered that hospital hallway and the way Cindy and Arthur had casually discussed my death. That was enough to push me over the edge. So I looked. Her search history was enlightening. There were searches for luxury items far beyond what we could afford, vacation destinations that would have cost a small fortune, and a stack of emails. So many emails. They were from her friend Lisa, talking about their plans for a fresh start. One email even said, "Hanging in there. Won't be much longer now." Who says that about their husband who's just had surgery? It was chilling. I took pictures of everything on my phone. Each screenshot, each email added to my growing collection of evidence. I made sure to back it all up, just in case. And then there was Megan. That part of all this was the hardest. I had hoped that maybe Megan was just going along with her mom, that she didn't truly mean what she was saying. But then yesterday, Megan left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to the bathroom. I know her passcode. It's her birthday. So I opened her messages. There was a group chat with her friends where she was complaining about having to play nurse for me. She called me pathetic and said she couldn't wait to get out of this dump. She even mentioned that her mom had promised they'd move somewhere better once the insurance money came through. One of her friends asked if that was kind of messed up. Megan's response? Not really. We've been waiting forever. That was the final straw. My own daughter, too. It felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had tried to protect, was crumbling right before my eyes. I couldn't believe it. But at least I had the evidence. Now I just needed to figure out what to do with it all. The build-up. Megan's message had hit me like a freight train. Her words echoed in my mind for hours. even as I tried to focus on the mundane tasks around me. "Barely even my real dad anyway," she had typed, followed by, "He's just a guy who married my mom." That stung in a way I couldn't describe. My heart sank, not just because of what she said, but because of what it implied about everything I had done for her. All those years of sacrifices, of being there, of being the only father she'd ever known. Just to be dismissed like that. I've been her dad since she was 2. Her biological father isn't in the picture. Cindy had Megan from a previous relationship, but I took on the role of father without hesitation. Every milestone, every scraped knee, every school play. If it was important to Megan, it was important to me. I'd worked hard, saved for her future, and always made sure she knew she was loved. But now, she had written me off. And it wasn't just a throwaway comment. It was a deeply ingrained belief that she didn't even have the decency to keep to herself. As I stared at the screen of her phone, I almost snapped. I wanted to confront her, right then and there. But then I remembered what Arthur had told me. Stick to the plan. Don't show your hand too early. So, instead of confronting her in the heat of the moment, I put the phone back down and retreated to my temporary bed in the living room, fighting the urge to let the anger take control. That night, I made a decision about the college fund. I'd been saving for Megan's education since she was 3. It wasn't much, just a modest savings account with about $42,000 in it. No fancy tax benefits or investment plans, but it was meant for her future. She was set to start college next year, and I had planned to hand it over to her when the time came. But after everything that had unfolded, I couldn't just let her have it. I called Arthur, my lawyer, to get some clarity. He confirmed that legally, the money was mine. I didn't have to give her a single penny. It stung, but at the same time, it gave me a sense of control. I wasn't just going to roll over and let them walk all over me, but I didn't want to be cruel either. So we came up with a compromise. The money would be placed in a trust. Megan could only use it for her education, and the payments would go directly to the school. No new car, no fancy apartment with her mom, just education, the way it was always intended. The plan. I spent the next few days preparing. I transferred a college fund into the trust account. I gathered all my evidence, printouts of hospital bills, screenshots of messages between Cindy and Megan, bank statements showing Cindy's extravagant spending, and other pieces of documentation that painted a picture of the betrayal I had endured. I knew this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. It wasn't going to be pretty, but it was necessary. I had a conversation with Arthur and Owen, my best friend, about how I should handle it. Arthur advised me to wait longer, gather more evidence. But I couldn't. I was done with the pretending. Every fake smile from Cindy, every half-hearted, "Do you need anything to add?" from Megan, it was eating at me. The facade had to end. I texted both Cindy and Megan that evening, asking if we could have a family dinner the following day. I said I was feeling a bit better and wanted to celebrate a small victory. Cindy seemed surprised but agreed. Megan replied with a simple, "Sure, whatever." Her typical response these days. I spent the night preparing. I rehearsed what I was going to say. I practiced how I deliver the evidence. Part of me feared their reaction, but honestly, I was more afraid of how I'd feel after the confrontation. Would it bring me peace? Would it even make a difference? But then I remembered the cold, calculating way they had discussed my death, how they had planned for me to die so they could cash in on my life insurance, how they had been waiting for me to pass so they could move on. That made me stop doubting myself. That was when I knew I was ready. The day of the dinner came, and everything was set. The table was ready, the evidence was organized, and I felt a sense of finality wash over me. I had done everything I could to be the father they needed, but now it was time for them to understand what they had done. They were about to learn the full extent of my feelings. The dinner was scheduled for 6 p.m. I had asked Owen to be on standby in case things got ugly. I wasn't sure how they would react, but I knew I had to do this. It was going to be painful, but it was necessary. I was done being the doormat. When Cindy and Megan arrived, the tension was palpable. I could see it in their faces, the unease, the anticipation of what was to come. Cindy tried to make small talk, but I wasn't in the mood. I had one purpose, and I was going to see it through. I laid out the evidence, one piece at a time. The hospital bills, the messages, the spending habits, and the way they had treated me. I showed them the trust one had set up for Megan's college fund and explained the changes I'd made. I watched their faces as the realization hit them. This wasn't some petty argument. It was a result of years of betrayal, of feeling unseen, undervalued, and disrespected. They didn't say much at first. Megan looked at me with a mixture of shock and defiance, while Cindy was speechless, her face pale. But as the conversation unfolded, I could see the cracks in their facade. Cindy finally spoke, trying to defend herself, but I didn't let her off the hook. I had no sympathy left. Not anymore. The aftermath. The dinner ended in silence. I packed up my things that night. It was clear that the family I had tried to build was no longer the one I wanted to be a part of. In the days that followed, I focused on moving my things out, distancing myself from the toxic environment they had created. Megan and Cindy tried to reach out, but I was done. I needed time to process everything. It's been 3 days since that dinner, and I've had time to reflect. I'm physically okay, though emotionally, it's been a roller coaster. I don't know if I'll ever feel the same way about Megan or Cindy again. What hurts most is not just a betrayal, but the fact that they never truly saw me as family. They only saw me as a means to an end. I still don't know if I made the right choice by confronting them, but I don't regret it. What I do know is this. I've taken control of my life, and I'm no longer going to allow anyone to treat me like I'm expendable. Anger is a hell of a motivator for healing. Who knew? So there I was, all day prepping dinner, while Cindy was at work and Megan was at school. I spent hours making everything from scratch. Nothing fancy, just a classic spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread and a salad. It used to be Megan's favorite meal when she was little. Yeah, I was fully aware of the irony of making her favorite meal for this particular occasion, but old habits die hard. I wanted to make it feel normal, I guess, before the truth hit. I set the table with our good dishes, the ones that normally only come out on holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas. I printed out all the evidence and placed it neatly in a folder beside my plate. I even set up my phone to record everything, making sure to capture every moment. I shaved, put on a nice button-down shirt, something presentable instead of the usual sweatpants and t-shirts I've been living in during my recovery. Around 5 p.m., Owen texted me, just checking in. He asked if I was really sure I wanted to do this without him there. I told him I needed a handle of myself, but that he should be ready to come over if I needed him. Arthur also sent a text reminding me to stay calm and stick to the facts. By 5:30, Cindy came home. She seemed surprised to see the table set and the food made, asking if Owen had helped me. I just smiled and said I was feeling much better. She gave me this odd look, kind of disappointed, but covered it up quickly and said she was going to change before dinner. Megan got home at 5:45, already complaining about some drama with her friends, not even fully inside the house before she stopped mid-sentence. She froze when she saw the dining room, asked what the special occasion was, and I just told her I wanted to have a nice family dinner. By 6 o'clock, we were all seated. The normality of it was almost surreal, that we were having dinner like any other family, while I sat on a ticking time bomb of information, ready to destroy everything. I waited until they'd both taken a few bites. Cindy was talking about some office gossip, and Megan was half listening, scrolling on her phone under the table. I cleared my throat and asked Megan to put her phone away just for dinner. She rolled her eyes but did it, like she was annoyed at the inconvenience. Then I asked them if they remembered visiting me in the hospital 2 weeks ago, specifically day 3 of my stay. They both nodded, and Cindy mentioned the flowers they brought. That's when I dropped the first bomb. I played the audio recording from my phone. I'd had the presence of mind to start recording when I first heard their voices in the hallway that day. The quality wasn't great, but it was clear enough to hear Cindy saying that once I died, they'd finally get the life insurance money and move somewhere better. Megan responded, saying she was tired of pretending to care about me. The looks on their faces, I'll never forget them. Cindy went completely white, and Megan's jaw literally dropped open. No one said anything at first. Then they both started talking at once. Cindy claimed I was misunderstanding, that they were talking about something else, and Megan started crying, saying she didn't mean it. I just sat there, watching them dig their holes deeper and deeper. When they finally ran out of excuses, I opened my phone folder and started laying out the evidence, one piece at a time. First came the screenshots of Cindy's emails, all about houses she couldn't afford. Then the browser history, showing her looking up life insurance payout timelines. Megan's text to her friends about me being pathetic and how they'd move once I was gone. Cindy switched tactics then. She went from denial to anger, bringing up all the old arguments. She started listing all the ways I'd supposedly failed her over the years, how I never gave her the life she deserved, how her friends' husbands all made more money, had bigger houses, went on nicer vacations. That was when I knew for sure I was making the right decision. 22 years together, and all she cared about was what I hadn't given her materially. Not the life we'd built, not the memories, just the stuff. I let her rant until she ran out of steam. Then, once the silence settled, I calmly told them both what I'd done over the past 2 weeks. I didn't need to say much more after that. The truth was already on the table, and nothing they could say would ever change it. A few weeks ago, I finally had the conversation with Cindy. I told her about the changes to the life insurance policy, how she wouldn't be receiving a cent from it anymore. Her face twitched when I said that, almost like I'd slapped her. I could tell it hit her hard. Then I brought up the savings account. I'd split it, taking my legal half. It was mine now, and she wasn't getting any of it. I made sure she knew that. I didn't stop there. I told her the divorce papers would be delivered to her tomorrow. I'd already consulted with a lawyer, and he assured me she wouldn't get much, given the circumstances. Her face was a mix of disbelief and anger. But I wasn't done. I turned to Megan and laid it all out for her, too. I told her about the changes to her college fund, how she could still use it for education, but it would no longer be available as cash. She couldn't just take it and spend it however she pleased. Megan's face crumpled at that. I could see the shock in her eyes, and she immediately started apologizing, saying she didn't mean any of it, that she loved me. For a split second, I almost bought into it, almost believed her. But then, I remembered the texts. Not just the ones where she said she was waiting for me to die, but the one where she flat out told someone I wasn't her real dad, just the guy who married her mom. That hit hard, especially since I tried to be there for her in every way I knew how. I looked her in the eye and said, I'll always love you, but I don't trust you anymore. Trust is earned, and right now, you have to earn it back if you want me in your life again. Cindy, of course, tried to pull the "but we're family" card. She begged me to go to counseling, to work through it. I couldn't help it. I just laughed. I asked her if she'd been thinking about our family bond when she was plotting how to spend my life insurance. It felt so cold, so calculated. At that moment, I realized there was no going back. The dinner had become a disaster. The food was half-eaten, cold, and forgotten. Cindy was crying. Megan was texting someone under the table, probably looking for support from her friends. And I was just done. I stood up and told them both I'd be staying at Owen's place effective immediately. I also told them I expected them to be out of the house by the end of the month, once the divorce proceedings were finalized and the assets were divided. Then I grabbed my pre-packed bags from the bedroom and walked out. Owen had been waiting for me down the street in his car. I texted him when things started getting heated. We drove back to his place in near silence. He asked me once if I was okay, but I just nodded. I couldn't trust myself to speak. I was numb, too angry, too hurt to say anything that wouldn't be a regret. That was 3 days ago. Since then, my phone has been blowing up with calls and messages from both Cindy and Megan. Cindy's texts have been a mix of apologies, threats, and desperate pleas for me to come back. Megan's messages are mostly just, "I'm sorry," over and over. She's trying to guilt-trip me into giving her another chance. I've been responding minimally. Just the facts about the divorce process, and when I'll be by to get the rest of my things. The practical fallout has been tough. I'm currently staying in Owen's spare room while I look for an apartment. It's not ideal, but it's a place to stay while I figure out the next steps. The divorce notification was delivered, and apparently, Cindy had a complete meltdown when she realized I was serious. She's already tried calling Arthur, my lawyer friend, to explain her side of things, but Arthur didn't take her call. He didn't want to hear it, and I don't blame him. The hardest part of all this, though, has been dealing with mutual friends and family. Everyone wants to know what happened. Some people have already taken sides without hearing the full story. My mom has called me like 15 times, trying to understand why her daughter-in-law and granddaughter are suddenly claiming that I've lost my mind and abandoned the family. I'm handling it the best I can, taking it one person at a time, showing the evidence when necessary. Most people get it once they hear the truth. It's tough, but I know I made the right decision. I can't keep living a lie, pretending everything's okay when it was so obviously not. Some people think I'm overreacting and that I should forgive them, because family is family. Honestly, those people can kindly F***K right off. So where's that leave me? Well, I'm staying at my brother's place at 49 years old, starting over after 2 decades of marriage. It's definitely not where I thought I'd be at this point in my life, that's for sure. But you know what? I'm not as devastated as I thought I'd be. There's something strangely freeing about having all the illusions stripped away. No more pretending everything's fine when it isn't. No more working myself to the bone for people who see me as a meal ticket rather than a husband or father. I had a beer with Arthur last night, and he said something that stuck with me. He said that some people spend their whole lives never knowing who truly cares about them and who doesn't. At least now I know for sure. It's been 6 months since that dinner, and I think you all deserve an update on how things have turned out. The divorce was finalized last month. Cindy didn't get much in the end. Arthur made sure of that. The evidence that she had been waiting for me to die was pretty damning in the proceedings. Now, she's had to downsize to a small apartment and actually get a full-time job instead of sticking to the part-time gig she'd been doing for years. From what I hear through mutual friends, she's bitter as hell and telling anyone who will listen that I ruined her life. Whatever. I've moved into my own place now. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom apartment closer to work. It's strange living alone after so many years, but also peaceful in a way I've forgotten. No one questioning why I want to watch football all Sunday. No one complaining about the leftovers I eat for 3 days straight, because cooking for one is hard. Just quiet. As for Megan, that's been the most surprising development. About 2 months after everything fell apart, she reached out and asked if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant but agreed. She showed up looking different, somehow smaller, less sure of herself. She brought a handwritten letter because she didn't trust herself to say everything right. The gist of it was that she knew she'd been awful. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, but she wanted me to know that she understood what she'd thrown away. We've met a few more times since then. It's awkward and stilted, nothing like the relationship we used to have. But it's something. She started college now, a state school she can afford with scholarships and the trust one set up for her. She seems to be taking it seriously, which is good. I don't know if we'll ever get back to where we were. Some trusts, once broken, stay that way. But I'm open to seeing where things go. She's young, and young people do stupid, cruel things sometimes. I'm not ready to write her off completely. Cindy, on the other hand, that chapter is closed for good. Some betrayals run too deep to ever heal properly. So, that's where things stand now. Not exactly a fairy tale ending, but a real one. Life goes on, even after the people you thought would always be there show their true colors. Thank you all for coming along on this journey with me. Your support and advice have meant more than you know, especially during the darkest days of all of this. I might not post much after this, trying to focus on rebuilding my life rather than dwelling on the past. But I wanted you all to know how it turned out. Life's too short to spend it with people who are waiting for you to die. Remember that.